Today, we're joined by Richard Lau, who's so integral to the development of the domain industry. We discuss what the future of conferencing looks like in his eyes, what he's excited about in the domain industry, biggest risk factors for domain investors, and a whole lot more. Enjoy the show.
FD was built by domain investors to increase your inquiries, sales, and profit. Forget spreadsheets and archived emails. Manage your entire investment portfolio in one place using a secure and completely confidential platform. Learn more at ft.com. That's EFTY, ft.com.
Hey, Sherpa Network. I'm Tess Diaz, executive producer of DomainSherpa.com, and today we're going to hang out with Richard Lau. Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We are excited to have you. And Drew Roser of Media Options. Hey, Drew, what's happening?
All good. Chilling in the hood.
All right. So, Richard, you have been in the news a bunch lately for your latest venture, logo.com. But let's back it up for the folks who haven't seen you in a while. You founded Registrar like 20 years ago, namesdirect.com, mydomain.com. You're so involved in the industry in general. You founded NamesCon, the primary conference for the industry. Resume.com was one of your more recent ventures. When did you start that? 2013?
Yeah, roughly. It's a bit of a blur.
Yeah, I bet. Busy guy. And then the Water School. Let's talk about the Water School for a quick second.
Yeah, so Water School, I've been actually involved since before it began, and I was really just a couch donor. But over the years, I got more and more involved, up to the point where Greg McNair was organizing trips to take fellow donors there, and then I became the executive director when the founder of Water School retired, and so I kind of jumped in with both feet, and we started NamesCon to support Water School. So a lot of people don't realize that, but that was the primary reason for starting NamesCon, was to have an event at which we could hold a water night where we shave people's heads and raise money for charity. And that turned into the full-fledged NamesCon conference, and then which subsequently sold and is now run by GoDaddy. So over the years, we raised $500,000 for Water School. And it's got 50 staff in Uganda, focuses on clean water projects, and does amazing work over there.
Wow. Have they been affected by the pandemic, or is it still able to move forward pretty much?
Yeah. So because Water School in Uganda works very closely with government, it doesn't go into any areas unless it has government approval, community buy-in, and the cooperation of the local health clinics. So unless those three are in place, Water School won't just arbitrarily pick a village and start to do its work. So because it's got such a close tie-in with the local government officials, the government officials reached out to Water School and said, hey, can you help us get the message out? Because you guys have been educating and doing behavioral change. We need to make sure that people are, in addition to washing their hands, doing the social distancing. So then Water School has changed some of its focus just over the COVID time period to reinforce the social distancing. Where the staff are outfitted with motorcycles so they can get easily from village to village. They have the loudspeakers. They can spread they're very well sourced and trusted in terms of holding community meetings, and so they've been able to facilitate the spreading of the education of how to fight COVID through the existing infrastructure that we've got in place. So it's been very effective.
That's super
so
cool.
Important to have a trusted voice, right? Because we saw it with Congo and other places where people even things like Red Cross. But people come in and, are trying to help, but there's just an inherent distrust. And then, that obviously has bad outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, you think we have misinformation over here, with social media. You've got the witch doctoring leg as well. So what do you do when, if you're not the trusted source and the witch doctor is the trusted source? My goodness, you're really starting from behind the eight ball. So we've got a huge leg up in the communities that we're in that we have been extremely effective improving the health conditions of those villages. And so when when Water School changes its adjusts its communication to include the social distancing and other COVID education, it's just a natural flow.
That's really amazing. I mean, who would have imagined when the Water School began that all this would develop or how much good it would do? That's really, really exciting.
And of course, everyone can learn more at waterschool.com. It's and we also have water.org, thanks to the generosity of PIR.
Amazing. What a bastard. I'm going to take this opportunity.
Sorry, I said water.org. I meant water.ngo, not water.org. Water.ngo.
Okay.
Sorry.
Water.org is Matt Damon's,
That's right. That's right.
Thing. I remember, I guess it was the first NamesCon, or it might have been no, I don't think it was a Names. It wasn't a NamesCon. It was I don't know if it was a NamesCon or a Domain Fest or what it was, but I remember very late, 3, 4 in the morning, having a little party up in Greg's room, and I don't even know how it all came about, but I think I was complaining that I needed to shave my head because I hadn't yet for a week or 2 or something, and Greg got out the clippers, and I think that was the birth of the head shaving because people started taking bets on whether or not I'd let him shave my head.
Yeah, so that was actually the very first, we named it after, called the water shave. And I distinctly remember because, Greg and I had rooms in a hotel in Santa Monica. It was at Domain Fest, I want to say 2012. And they
had those bungalows, right?
Well, no. So the hotel that the Domain Fest was at is called the Fairmont Miramar, and they had the bungalows. But we were down the block a ways.
That's right.
At Shangri-La, which is not the high-end Shangri-La hotel, but it was this tiny little one location Shangri-La. But all the top floor suites, the balconies all connected, and so we had rented all of them, just all of the people from the conference. And so Greg was like, "Hey, well, let's have a little, get together at the on the balcony after the dinner." And then he gets on the mic as someone from Domain sponsor is saying goodnight to everyone at the restaurant, and he's like, "Everyone follow me, we're having a party." And so then 200 people show up at the balcony, and the hotel security just basically shut down the stairwell and the elevator. Fast forward a few hours, and Greg has razors, or a shaver, and has you, and I think it was Vern, and
then it ended up exactly Vern, and like 3 other people.
I think it was Jeff Gabriel as well. I think we ended up
Jeff
shaving.
Gabriel, Vern.
Yeah, and it was, I just strictly remember it was like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just shaking my head like, is this actually happening?
Of course it is.
Then we turned it into a real thing called Water Shave, and I think we shaved, some people really stepped up to the ball, like Jody, right?
Yeah, Jody shaved her head. That was amazing.
That was at Domaining Europe, right? So it wasn't just NamesCon. It was across all of the different domaining events, and it was and everyone. It was across all companies. It was really an event that we can bring the whole community together.
Yeah, it really became the industry cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a good one at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to
So,
get update on it. What's that, Drew?
no, I was going to say that's a good segue into you know, the names con of today. You know, it's like, I mean, I feel like every generation is always nostalgic about, you know, the good old days, and you know, but recently this is actually a topic I've been reading a lot about and thinking about, which is that, you know, I don't know that there necessarily are, you know, good old days, and it's easy to look back and think, oh, those were better times, and you know, things were better then, and you know, it's just more familiar, it's just more comfortable, and I think it's super important that everybody just starts getting a little more uncomfortable and being, you know, okay with change and with new things, because I think we're you know, facing a tsunami of change. And so, you know, those parties, those just the insane stuff that would happen at these events, um, uh, you know, many of which I would say shaped my sort of entrance into the domain, you know, which was much later than yours. But those experiences shaped my career in a way. Certainly the relationships that I made, and you know, now we've got a digital names con coming up, and I think that presents some really cool opportunities, but it's going to be very different. And so now you're out of NamesCon. You were the founder of NamesCon. What are your thoughts on a digital NamesCon and you know, the good, the bad? You
Yeah,
know.
I think that there are pros and cons. You know, it's a very different medium to meet with people over Zoom. But
Mm-hmm.
I do know that you know, the technology that we have now in terms of our video conferencing and the bandwidth is to almost everyone's homes is so much better than it was even, you know, 5-10 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, the timing wise for COVID to be kind of forcing this change upon us is actually not that bad, right? It
Mm-hmm.
could be far worse. You know, we could be
Very
on.
timely. In fact, I'd say it's, you know, it couldn't have been more timely, right? It was like
Right.
we were on that precipice and it just pushed us over the edge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, there's also the work from home aspect of what we've been doing, and you know, frankly, for Logo.com, we started to do a work from home process early 2020, and it had nothing to do with COVID. It was just kind of a choice of the team. And so
Mm-hmm.
when COVID struck and it's like, okay, now we have to work from home, it was like it wasn't even a speed bump for us. And because the
Yeah.
technology and the services, all the SaaS services to support working from home was all in place. So for us, it was no problem whatsoever. So when you look at that for conferencing, you know, people have been working on virtual conferencing. They've been working on the software, the platforms to support it. And they've just kind of fallen a little flat because people just haven't had that motivation of, well, I kind of like going in person. I like traveling. I like going to a new city.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, now we have that motivation of, well, what if you can't go, but you still want to achieve all of the education, the networking, the socializing. And so now we've got these platforms that are, you know, I'd say like 80% there. And so now as millions of people over the next year will be using these platforms to congregate and hold and attend conferences, it will, you know, get up to the 90% point. You know, people will
Mm-hmm.
demand certain features. Will weed out players that are, you know, holding their platforms together with Scotch tape and string, and you know, we'll figure it out. So I'm excited to see where we get to, and I think that you know, NamesCon is holding their virtual event in September. We're going to have to see what happens in January. I really hope that it's an in-person, but it could very well be another virtual event. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, here we are in July, and 6 months from now, you know, we got the 3-month and 6-month points. And I think that you know, looking at NamesCon in January, right? That's really been the start of the year for domainers, domain investors, pre-NamesCon, right? You're talking
Take
about
the
like
pulse.
Domain Fest. So going back to the mid 2000s when it first started, you know, and even traffic was in, you know, March usually. So the start of the year, I think, will be a much larger event, even though we've got NamesCon in September. The NamesCon in January will be a much larger event, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. So even if we're talking about it being virtual, that gives us 6 months. When I say us, I mean the world, to figure out, you know, these virtual conferences, which are being held every day right now.
Every day. There's thousands of them. It's just
exactly
crazy.
So by the time NamesCon January hits, all of the bugs should have been ironed out by that point. So by then, I do think we'll have all of the things that you and I can think of, and like, well, you know, breakout rooms, you know, private sessions. So, you know, we're together, we're attending the same the same session, and we're chatting in the side, and then you send hey, you know, while I'm listening to the speaker, I'm also clicking around saying, oh, who's in the room with me? Oh, there's Andrew. I've never spoken to Andrew before. I hear he runs DomainSherpa. Let me send an intro. Send an intro. There's a little calendar. You might be open to a 5-minute meeting to people that you don't know, 10-minute meeting to people you do, and a 15-minute meeting to people that are on your list, saying, hey, if these people contact me. And so there's all these cool connection tools that will allow facilitation of meetings that we've been doing on an app, but probably not as there's not as much real estate on your app as there is on your laptop and your desktop. So it's easier to show all these different options. And so I do think that there's going to be some very different but very valuable connection tools that are going to be available. I don't know what platform. I have talked with NamesCon, but I can't remember what platform that they're using, and I don't know if the things I'm rattling off are in that platform. But I'm hoping they are by January. If not,
two points. One is that one of the things that's kind of exciting to me about this is, you know, on the one hand, as you alluded to before, like I enjoy that travel. I travel a lot with my family. I don't travel for business basically at all. I might travel once or twice a year, you know, for NamesCon, and then NamesCon Europe if it's convenient for me. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I might do one client trip if it's high value. That's it. I really don't travel for business anymore. And so I really enjoy that start of the year, get my finger on the pulse. I read the in-person, especially when we get to swing our peacock feathers because we, won an award or whatever. It just, there's an energy. It re-energizes me for the year. It's kind of like, okay, boom, let's come, get the pulse, see the people I haven't seen, kind of get a read on the market, and hear about, what are the players doing? What's the next year going to look like? What are the projects that are in the pipeline? And then, and so obviously I'm going to miss that tremendously if we don't get an in-person event. But at the same time, on DomainSherpa, and I know GoDaddy, for example, any big player in this space, the ultimate goal should be and is to grow the pie. And so what a digital conference represents is an opportunity for the people that either can't afford, or because of visas or because of whatever reasons, they can't travel to the United States to come to these events. I mean, this represents a much cheaper and accessible way for potentially thousands or tens of thousands of people that may have an obscure interest to put a little bit, put an extra toe in the water to really feel like they've actually gotten involved in the industry rather than just reading blogs, going on a forum, listening to DomainSherpa. This gives them the ability to, like you said, interact with the people that engage with content in a more meaningful way. So I am pretty excited because I have, and I mean it, my ultimate goal really is grow the pie, because I just think that, you know, that's a win all around. We deal in scarce assets. If you grow the pie, scarce asset values go up. And I really believe that domain names represent, you know, an unparalleled opportunity for people the world over. And that excites me. So I am super, super excited about that. I forgot what I know. I saw this tweet on Twitter the other day. It was a guy, you know, one of the big Bitcoin people. And I don't know, he was probably high or so. He was just rattling off like random ideas that he had, business ideas. You know, basically like, here, somebody go build this, right? It was like 50 ideas. He was just rattling them off tweet by tweet. And one of them was somebody go build a conference, a digital conference, whereby, you know, either 100% or a portion of your entrance fee becomes tokenized and can be used to tip your favorite speakers. So it's like, nice. Okay, you are listening to content from somebody and they do something that they say something that is really like revelational for you, turns on a light switch for you. You know, you just really enjoyed that. They shared something personal or whatever. You could tip them from an app. You're on your phone, right. You know, or you're on the computer. You just boom, you just tip them. Yeah. And like, so, okay, now we are optimizing for content curation from what does the audience want. Now we are optimizing for the quality of the speakers. You know, now we're optimizing, you know, we're going to increase the quality of the speakers potentially because you're incentivizing them to come and speak and do a great freaking job, to be prepared, to present great material, to have other, you know, potentially, you know, in a live conference, personally, I don't like a lot of sort of sidebar materials, you know, what do you call it? PowerPoint slides. And I think it's a distraction, but other people feel differently. But in a digital format, you can engage with that content. It's different. And so you can download that content. You can, you know, so I think that the ability to directly monetize, not through here, pay to come and join a conference, but pay for the content you consume or tip the people providing that content, or, you know, share, which I think is the future of companies in general, but not yet. But I think the future will be participatory. So, you know, it's like, you're going to come to this conference, we're going to incentivize you to come, and we're going to incentivize the speakers to participate. And we're going to be more like a credit card processor who puts us all together, creates the framework and the pipeline for this to happen. And we'll take a piece off the top, but, you know, we're going to charge you whatever the market says is the right price. And a portion of that is going to get distributed among, you know, speakers, you know, whatever, however it gets doled up, but you're incentivizing the various people involved in this in order to create a more engaged digital environment. So I haven't thought this through super well, but I as soon as I read that, I thought, that's it. That's the future. That's how you create a far more engaged digital conference. And imagine somebody wants to, you know, and again, I'm not thinking this through, and this might be a complete douchebaggery, but imagine that you can pay to get a meeting with Richard Lau. You know, it's like, hey man, I want to talk to you, and you don't really need to talk to me, but, you know, I'll give you a $20 tip to talk to me for $10. And it's not about, you know, $20 isn't going to change your life, but, you know, it just shows it's about skin in the game. It's like, all right, I'm not here to waste your time. I actually have an important question, or I want to get your perspective on something, or, you know, I'm willing to put up, you know, real value in order to have that exchange.
And the money doesn't have to go to you. Like, say you wanted a meeting with Frank Schilling, and Frank's like, okay, well, I don't want to waste my time with tire kickers, so I'm not just going to open it up to everybody. But if you know, ante up $500, which all goes to, you know, water school or whatever charity, then he knows that you've put some skin into the game, but he's not, you know, charging himself out at $500, because that's not, you know, there's no way you could pay Frank enough for an hour of his time, right? But he's just saying, look, I want you to show that you've you paid something so that you're, A, going to show up, B, going to value my time, and C, just
Skin in the game.
Yeah,
Skin in the game.
But yeah, I mean, you can also do that, kind of gamify where, people earn some tokens when they are posing questions, and then other people are, in the chat room can say, hey, that's a good question, and give them one coin. And, I do think that we've seen some, at the last names con, I was doing a fireside chat and said, in the app, post some questions. And, of the 10 questions I asked, probably 6 came from the audience. And it wasn't them walking up to the microphone. It was just them sending it over virtually text message, right, inside the app. And
which again democratizes that process, because there's a lot of people that are shy about picking up the microphone, standing up, but not shy about posting that question in the app.
Yeah, and to your point, it also expands the audience from the 200 people or 400 people in the room to maybe potentially 2,000 people that are online just plugging in to and they're like, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to ask Frank this question. And it's like, okay, well, maybe it costs you a couple points to pose the question, but then the audience members can say, hey, these are the best questions, and they rank them, and you can earn them back, so that you're not just flooded with with useless questions. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of cool things that can happen from the virtualization, and we start to see that with virtualization of the in-person conferences, such as being able to pose questions or have chat as a sidebar on your app while you're standing there in person, right? Or you're attending in person, but you're using the app to try and arrange in-person meetings. Well, it's like you've got one leg in the virtual and one leg in the virtual conference and one foot in the in-person. And now we're just taking that right now to both feet in virtual. So, I think it's over the last couple of years, people have gotten a lot more comfortable having the app and using the apps when they're attending conferences. And this is really just a kind of a forced extension of that.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think
like
we've been saying for so many things, in general with this pandemic, how it's just sped up that adjustment process for people. And you're right, Richard, there has been this little bit of synergy. And I really wonder, I think years to come, we're not going to recognize how the little baby steps that were going on in 2018 versus where we're going to be probably in 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see in 2022, you go to a conference in person and you'll be like, oh, I missed that. Why don't they have that feature from, when we did the virtual conference here in the app? Like I love that ability, and you'll be wandering around and you'll be like, man, this is so inefficient. I got to walk all the way to the other session instead of just clicking rooms, So.
And then we're in the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've been the last 2 days, today and yesterday. Richard, you should actually sign up for this. It ends today, but most of the sessions are still yet to come today. But there's a virtual gathering or conference hosted by Real Vision. RealVision.com is it's a macro investor content platform, and I love it. I mean, I've subscribed to it for years. It's the smartest people in macro investing and investing, period, as far as I'm concerned. And more and more lately, they've been getting really interested in the crypto space. And so I think they had a lot of their audience asking more and more questions about crypto, and specifically Bitcoin. And so these guys decided to put together a crypto, it's called the Crypto Gathering. And it's 48 hours. And it is, the agenda is identical to like a NamesCon. You've got multiple stages. You've got 2 or 3 sessions happening at the same time. One of them is usually like archived content. One of them is fresh live content. There could be 2 live stages, one for beginners, one for more experts. And then everything is recorded. So then if you are watching one, you can still go back and watch the other one. And then they've got Slack integrated and happening in tandem, which I'm not a big fan of Slack. So I haven't really enjoyed that part of it, but it's been interesting to see how they're doing this multifaceted approach. And there's unbelievable amounts of engagement. And like, some of the people that are involved here are like the biggest investors in the world. And they're like, it's like 50-year-old kids, like on a new technology for the first time. They're like, whoa, asking questions in Slack and it's just amazing to watch because we are witnessing in real time this unbelievable shift.
What's
so
driving
I was impressed.
Engagement?
What's that?
What's driving that engagement? They're just a bunch of geeks excited about new
curiosity. I mean, it's greed. Greed is driving the engagement. It's the biggest investors in the world watching, this emerging asset class and all the amateur investors that are blowing their returns out of the water. And they're like, I want a piece of this. And I need to understand that if I'm going to get my piece. And so these guys literally, to their credit, assembled the greatest panel of Bitcoin and crypto experts on the face of planet Earth, almost without exception. Like basically almost every single one of the people, if I had to select, the top, let's say 50 people in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto, this is them. And they're all giving talks and on panels and, it's incredible. I mean, for example, there's never ever been, and there's a lot of crypto conferences, there's never been a crypto conference that included this breadth of experts. But when everybody's just sort of sitting in their living room and they can just flip open a laptop, it's real easy to assemble this type of panel. So that's another advantage in and of itself. So yeah. There's good and there's bad, but yeah. I think mostly good. But we do got to figure out a way to virtualize the social aspect because that is ultimately important. I think, you, Greg, Perkins, Amar, there's 5 guys, 10 people maybe, and that really, for whatever reason, were very kind to me and shared a lot of information with me when I started. And I'm not sure that would have happened, virtually. But
yeah, that is the hard side of it. Is what I call the hallway meeting or lobby con. It's hanging out in the lobby, and then just as people wander by, they come over and say hi, and then you start to have a conversation. And honestly, I've stood in I've gone to like a traffic or NamesCon and gotten 20 feet past the registration desk and stood there for 3-4 hours, just talking with random people that go by. And I did that I was at the ICANN in Montreal, and went into their exhibit hall, and you walk into the exhibit hall and there's a round table, like literally just a circular table in the corner, and I just plugged myself down and I was like, this is perfect. I'm just gonna sit here, and as people wander by into the exhibit hall, we'll just call them over or say hi, and then people that I don't know, I'll just be like, hey, so what are you doing here, right? And it's that aspect is very difficult to replicate in the virtual world. And so that'll be interesting to see how do they address it, because I do think it's addressable. I don't know what that answer is. And the 2 things that I would do and I would recommend to people to do at conferences in real life is, you go into a session, you sit down, you introduce yourself to the person on the left, on the right, in front, and behind, right? And at every session, you're making 4 new connections, and you go to 30 sessions. by the end of the conference, you've got 120 new LinkedIn connections.
Yeah.
How do you do that when you're going to sessions virtually? That's easy. You can click on people. You can actually probably do more, because you could, if you're a real networker, you're Andrew, you're gonna talk to everybody in that chat room and then send them all a private message. But how do you replicate?
Well, so I'm actually the guy. I'm way better live than I am in person. Like I'm on that Slack channel on this crypto thing, and that's not, it's not my industry. It's not, nobody knows me from a hole in the wall. And
right.
So, there I'm, suddenly shy. It's like, I'm not sending anybody private messages, and I'm not, speaking up. I thought I answered a couple of questions that I felt like I had a confident answer for, but, for the most part, I'm sort of waiting in the wings and listening. And so it's interesting how it changes.
Different personalities, right?
But I can imagine that it does the opposite for people who are shy in person, but become very much alive digitally.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I get messages from people that are just reaching out, and they say, I'm brand new, I don't know anything. Here's a question, and I'm like, I'll answer that.
Yeah.
And, I can imagine that those people in real life might be extremely shy, but because they have that almost anonymity, that they are like, okay, I have some confidence here. And so it affects different people different ways. But I do think that the LobbyCon is something that's very difficult to replicate online.
Yeah.
That standing in and just people wandering by, and you're like, hey, I didn't know you were here. And I haven't seen you in 4 years, that kind of thing, like picking up with old.
You know what I was thinking about? You remember chat roulette?
Yeah.
Some kind of like closed, you can't have it open to the world because we know what happens, but, like a closed environment chat roulette where maybe that replicates it in some way, where you sort of, it's like you posting up at your round table and waiting for people to show up.
Yeah. I can see that. I've been saying that Zoom should have a trusted contacts list where I just leave my Zoom on all day. This is what I'll pay for premium.
That's a great idea.
I've got it on all day, and you want to pop by and say hi. You don't need to go into the waiting room and be accepted. It's just like, your face just appears on the screen, and a ding is like, hey, Richard, it's Andrew. I'm stopping by. I'm like, hey.
Policy.
Yeah.
So, obviously you want to make sure that you're prepared for that, right? You remember that your camera's on, etc. But, if you're at a conference, you're attending the conference, you could have that ability. It's like, hey, if anyone wants, when I'm not in a session and I'm just kind of browsing around in between sessions, I'm available. If somebody wants to pop in, they can just pop in. Or,
totally.
it's one of my, if they're connected to me on LinkedIn or Facebook, that they can just pop in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can maybe do different levels, but I do think there has to be a way for them to address the more socialized, human nature of in-person meetings online. And I think there are ways. They just have to build them and implement them nicely.
Yeah, and we're going to have this compressed schedule where everybody's building different things and trying them all out, and we're going to be in a different place. Hopefully
very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah.
So
I want to know what you're excited about in the domain industry right now.
I see a lot of guys. I just turned 50 last month. So I'm slowing down a bit.
He means 15, folks.
Yeah. But it's exciting to see the continued influx of younger people coming in and making their own luck. People. I'm a true believer in making your own luck.
100%.
It's opportunity wrapped around work, and nothing comes easy in this world. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And so, I see people coming in and, I was just speaking with Josh from DNWE, and,
Mm-hmm.
he's a guy who's making his own luck, and, just taking opportunities and exploding them into further opportunities, and taking, a podcast that I think his podcast is like 2 months old, and he's already got a decent following. And, I think that it's guys like that that are continuing to come into the industry, make their own niches, that I think is exciting. And to me, I've got my .com portfolio that I've spent decades building. And I've got, a kind of a formula that I'm following that we've done with resume.com, and now we're doing the same with logo.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got my own, my own niche, which has, is a 20-year overnight success. So it was a different path for me.
I have to interrupt you for 1 second. Just because probably a lot of our audience knows of you, but doesn't know you. And you're like the most modest human in the domain industry. But I have to just say, Richard is somehow in some way connected to every successful venture in the entire domain industry. He either advised them, told them to do it, helped them, invested in them, founded it, but never told anybody. Whatever the situation is, your modesty is noted, but it should be known that you were having tremendous success before logo.com, before
Resume, yeah.
Resume.com. These were sort of almost your retirement highlight reel.
Yeah, it was funny because when we started NamesCon, it was an idea back in the fall of 2013. Gosh, I think that was it. Yeah. James and I were sitting in New York. We'd gone to a conference in New York, and we were sitting at a pizzeria, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning. We were waiting to see Frank Schilling. And I said, I've got this crazy idea. There's not been a Domain Fest, announced. What if we put the conference on? And that was literally 90 days from that point to when we actually held NamesCon. But my point is that, what is my point? My point is that, when I started to promote NamesCon, there were a few people quite vocal saying, who is this guy? How does he think that he can pull a conference together in 90 days? I've never heard of him. And, it had been, legitimately, it had been 10 years since I won the, Domainer of the Year award in 2004, when, some of these guys are still in, school.
We lost you. You went mute. Or is that just me?
I think it's just you.
You're back.
Okay. I was just saying that, some of these guys in 2004, when I got that award, Rick Schwartz's conference, was, they were still in high school, right? So legitimately, 2014, they're like, who is this dude, right? And he's walking in off stage left. And I had been fairly quiet, right? And so, just quietly, doing the domain investing, domain brokering, etc. And they didn't know that I had done lots of domain hijacking recovery. I'd started dozens and dozens of registrars, like you said, advised on a lot of ideas in the early days. I wish I had invested in more of them instead of just advising. But
no, but it all comes back to you in spades.
Yeah. So now I a lot of people listening to your podcast and watching the podcast now are like, who is this guy, right? And it's like, I have built a sizable .com portfolio up. I've got a lot of failures, a lot of buried buried failures in the backyard, but the successes outweigh the failures, and that's really the end of the day. All you need is your successes
Exactly.
outweigh your failures.
Great.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. Thanks for tooting my horn a bit. But yeah, I'm focused now on taking the .coms that we do have in inventory, dusting them off one at a time, and applying a lot of focus to building out these category defining domain names. And we did it with Resume. We learned some lessons along the way in terms of we did a complete offshore team. We did a mix of an offshore and an onshore team, and then we ended with an onshore team, which was obviously the most expensive, but turned out to be the best for my personality. I've seen other people, they've had tremendous success with a mix. Like a team in Bangladesh, for example, 100 people there, or a team of several hundred in the Ukraine. But we're doing a smaller team, 5 to 10 people, all local, all onshore. And so we're taking what we learned with resume.com, which is now owned by Indeed. And we're doing the same with Logo. And so we've had it for years, we're dusting it off. We've been percolating the ideas for about 3 years in terms of what it is we're wanting to build into the product. And so that's what I'm excited about for myself personally, is taking these domains one at a time and working on them, or doing that either as a partnership or as my own type project. For others in the industry, I see so much success.
Can we stay there for 1 second, though?
Sure.
So I'm always preaching that one of the biggest mistakes that domain investors make is that they try to put on the domain development hat. And I think that is true. I think that, you're in a unique position that you've had tremendous success. You've seen the failures and the successes. You've had failures and successes. You've learned a lot of extremely valuable lessons that take people many, many years and lots of money to learn, lots of lost money to learn. And you're in a really privileged position to now be able to do exactly what you just said, which is take one amazing name out of your portfolio, dust it off, think about it big picture. What should this be? And then, organizing the capital, the labor, and the utility to make it into a business, and then, monetize it and see what happens. What are three, because I say this, and the reason I preach it is because, man, I have nothing but failures in that area. I mean, literally, from the first time I met Tess and we tried to develop southwestfrance.com into everything about wine and Burgundy, to spearfishing.com, and you name it. I mean, I don't even know how many projects. Ganjapreneur has been a success, but a success in the sense that it's, we have like 100% market penetration, and everybody in the domain industry, the cannabis industry, knows Ganjapreneur, but it's not a big money maker. It's not. I'm not. I'm no longer involved in it because it just doesn't. It's not worth my time. But I love it. It's still my baby. But I can't really say feather in my cap. What are 2, 3 lessons? If there was 3 things that were sort of real shifts in perspective, or shifts in what did you learn along the way that you said, all right, now I'm ready to go build logo.com and do a business.
Okay, so
build resume.com and do a business.
So I would say that say people take years, learn a lot of expensive mistakes, etc. I have taken the years. I'm 50. I've taken years, and I have many dead and buried projects and each one has been expensive in terms of time and money. So in terms of do I recommend that domain investors become domain developers? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It has to be something that you're doing because you're passionate about it, and it has to be something that I look at it as work play. If I'm not excited about it from the playful side of my personality, then I'm not going to want to do it. But then also, I'm the face here. I'm kind of the talking head about logo.com, but I'm not the one doing the hard lifting. Okay. So there's a team of 5 people, and their full-time waking hour, every waking hour they're focused on is logo.com. I have the luxury of that's not me. I'm not doing that, because if I did that, then the bread and butter of the domain investing side, which is financing the domain development, wouldn't happen. So you cannot be the actual developer and the domain investor. So you do take more of a passive role in terms of the actual development of it, including being the project manager. So that was a big shift for me in terms of looking at resume.com and not being the project manager, the full-time project manager, right? I'm more of the advisor, and raising the capital and getting the a lot of the relationships, introductions together. And same thing with logo.com. It's I'm not the one who's saying, hey, this is what we're going to put this here, we're going to put this there. I'm not that guy, because I need to spend my time making sure that the domain investing wheels are still chugging along. But the advising and the vision, I'm highly participating in that, and I'm talking with the team every day, but I'm not the one driving the team. So that's what I would advise, is that if you've got a project and you want to develop, you need to bring in a partner who's as excited as you. And my goodness, that's a tough thing to do, right? Because your partner it's like a marriage. And you've got to be able to work with them. You've got to have enough capital. You've got to be able to build a team. There's a lot of luck that goes into it. So you've got the work, you've got the opportunity. You're creating your own luck, but my goodness, everything has to hit off correctly to have it be a success. So we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. I don't recommend that domainers just become developers. That's a just have a bonfire in the backyard and burn some money.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be way more fun too.
Yeah. James a couple times. Why don't you tell our audience who James is?
So James is my business partner, and we've been working together. Gosh, it's been over 10 years now, and we've done various different ventures together. He doesn't like the limelight, but he was if you saw NamesCon, especially in the first 2 years, he was running around in the background doing all of the tech, and so and just logistically making things happen. And he is, he's talked about hire people that are smarter than you. He's smarter than me. He's got more education.
Very sharp guy.
Yeah. And, and he has been not only a partner, I mean, he's younger than me. He's not just a partner, but he's also been a coach and been like, had the difficult conversations like, hey, Richard, you're writing this website. It's been losing money for 6 years. It's just a dead horse. Just shut it down, right? And takes
Richard, have you taken your pills today?
Yeah, yeah. Takes the sentimentality out of some of the business decisions, and so it's been a really valuable partnership over the years. So, and he's the main driver behind logo.com, and so he's the one running that team. And he and I, it's not to say that I'm not working every day on logo.com, but he is the one working the 12-hour days on logo.com. So Yeah. So, people say we look alike, which I take as a compliment because he's younger and he's more of the Greek god. So I'll take that.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
so I want to ask a little bit more about domains. So it sounds like you're not buying domains right now. What do you think are the biggest risk factors for domain investors and the industry right now?
Yeah, so I did do a portfolio purchase about, a year and a half, 2 years ago, and that is a good test for me in terms of the domains that sell for between say $500 and $5,000, and most of them are listed with buy it now pricing. Most of them are 2 and 3 word .coms. So we've got some brandables mixed in there, but mostly they're, somethingyoga.com or somethinggroup.com. And it's non-infringing domains that move fairly well in the secondary market.
The stuff that Josh would specialize in, for example.
Exactly. Or, you see Mike Mann on Facebook all of the time talking about domains that he sells. And his math is always better than mine. He buys it for like $19 and sells them for $4,000.
His math is not readily apparent.
Okay, but the biggest risk factor
on a one-off basis, he's got great math. But
exactly,
the portfolio,
and that's the risk that I'm talking about. Exactly. is the carrying costs constantly are increasing, right? Politics aside, whether VeriSign should be raising their rates or whether they really should be lowering them or cutting them by 90%. Let's not talk about that. But the fact of the matter is that we have an environment where the cost of most of the registry fees are going up every single year at call it an average of 5% to 7% a year. So every say 12 years, the price is going to double. Our carrying cost is going to double. So the risk factor is in getting lost in the math, saying, oh, I hand registered this for $10 and I sold it for $500. I'm a genius. Yes, but how many domains did you have to carry that year? On the individual, it looks fantastic. On the whole, my goodness, you might be eking out a single digit percentage return. Yeah,
and doing a lot of work for that.
And plus you're doing a lot of work. So that's the big risk for me, is the increasing costs, increased carrying costs, and do we have enough sell-through rate on our portfolios as a whole, as an industry, to do this? And so that's a big.
And what's your initial feeling on that?
My initial feeling is that the secondary market rates actually need to go higher. I agree. That we're selling them too cheaply. Yep. And that people are starting to get more and more comfortable realizing, hey, I need a .com. I need to pay for it. And I think that what we haven't embraced yet, which we should, is the pay later scheme, right? So when you're on GoDaddy, you're on Afternic, you're on Sado, the payment terms should be right up front. It should be, would you like to buy this for, instead of it being $688, really that domain should be priced at $1,288, and it should be 4 equal payments of, you do the math, $322.
Or we should just bang your credit card for $14 every month, and
Yeah, but I do think that you're on Old Navy and they've got pay later, right? For a pair of slacks for $60. Why don't we have pay later across every single aftermarket platform?
I'll tell you why. The singular reason that we don't is that there's no agreed upon consensus on how to value a domain name, number one. And then number two, because of some of the math that we were talking about earlier, everybody's so focused on recapturing capital and less focused. I just had, we've got a few partnerships in some portfolios and individual domains. And I was just talking to one of our partners in a small portfolio we own. And, you know, they were like, we got a very significant offer. It's a 7-figure offer, but it's a lease for 3 years with a final payment at the end.
Right.
7 figures. And a nice solid lease increasing each year. Very, you know, for me, it's like, couldn't be better. I would like to see more money up front, but you know, it is what it is. They had the opposite view. They're like, I'm not interested in this deal. And it's like, well, do you have somebody that'll pay you 7 figures for the name now?
Right.
No. So you can carry this thing, you know, the next buyer that's going to show up with a 7-figure offer over the next 5 years. I mean, it's like it's 50-50 whether that's going to happen.
Right.
And you can generate cash flow in the meantime with very little downside opportunity cost. That downside opportunity cost gets less and less every day. Or you can sit on it, collect zero, and hope that somebody comes along and pays you the same price, you know, over the course of the next 5 years. Everybody's so focused on opportunity cost of these deals. And I think that's one of the big problems that has to shift. We need a systemic shift in what people are fixated on. And also, we need a systemic shift at the, you know, GoDaddy level, right? We need GoDaddy and Sato, Afternic. We need the large marketplaces to have this front and center, as you said, in the registration path, in the marketplace path, that it's, you know, like on a not on huge domains lenders, you know, or on Dan.com lenders. It's like, you know, you just show up and here's your options. You can buy right now if you want, or you can initiate a lease, or you can finance it. And it's like, you know, a lease is boom. You might put a little money down to buy a fixed price purchase option. You're going to immediately get used to the name with a lease. That option and the lease are two separate things. And that keeps you out of any bankruptcy, you know, troubles. And that buyer knows that they've got a fixed price purchase option they can execute at any time as long as their lease is current.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like the most obvious, just, it's a win for everybody, right? Like for portfolio owners, you're generating cash flow, particularly in a world with zero interest rates. The number one thing to worry about is cash flow. Don't worry about, you know, if somebody hands you $1 million right now, what are you going to do with it? Like I know that's a champagne problem, as my friend likes to say.
Right.
But what are you going to do with $1 million right now? Like, where are you going to generate cash flow?
Right.
Like, unless it's because you have a specific opportunity, unless you have access to something most people don't have, there's very few places. Like government bonds are going to pay you less than 1%. Soon you might pay them. Banks aren't paying you anything. In order to capture any return any return above 1%, you have to take extraordinary risk. Whether you understand the risk or not, I assure you, there's an unprecedented amount of risk in virtually every financial asset out there today, and very little of them produce any cash flow. And so I think our focus should be cash flow, not, you know.
No, I agree. I think one of the issues I think you touched on is that, you know, we need the aftermarket platforms on side, and you know, it wasn't GoDaddy, but it was another one that I was having a discussion with where the buyer was offering payment terms and, you know, payments over time, and the platform
won't allow it.
They said, yeah, we'll allow it, but you have to pay our commission out of the down payment.
Yeah.
I was like,
upfront.
Wait a second. So you're going to take your commission out of the entire down payment. You know, it's actually their commission was more than the than the deposit. So they really wanted the deposit plus the first payment. And then I'm like, well, so what happens if the buyer, you know, defaults? He's like, well, then you get your name back. I'm like, so then you're the only one that has made money in this thing, but you're the one bringing the buyer, right? The buyer's coming through your platform. It's not. As I said, no, you need to make money when I make money, right? Or you earn your commission as the payments come in. And they agreed to it, but I was like, this just shows a fundamental flaw in the thinking in terms of like, if they're thinking that, then why would they want to promote, payments over time?
Totally.
Right.
That's exactly right.
But I think that if we had, pay later, payments over time, lease options, rent only options, rent to buy options, that the sell-through rate would go up. Because it's just like, when you walk into a car dealership.
So would prices. Right? So would prices.
And so you could, when you lease a car, you end up, the car salesman loves it because he can get you to pay more for the car while having lower monthly payments. It's the same thing here. It's like, okay, instead of selling you a domain for $688 all cash, we're going to sell it to you for $1,288, and we're going to spread the payments over 2 years, right? And you're like, gosh. That's nothing. I'm just, that's like a cell phone bill expense to get my domain name. Sounds great. Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. Right. But if it's $688, they're like, oh, maybe I should go hand register, a 5-word .ca or, so it's like, I do think that we're leaving a lot of money on the table because we don't have the pay later schemes in place. So that I think is a huge opportunity over the next year or two for the platforms to embrace, and that will allow us to have higher volume and higher prices.
I think we all agree that it's a huge opportunity, and that it should happen, but and I think we probably agree that it will happen eventually. But you just said in the next year or two. Do you think that will actually occur in the next year or two, or like we all wish it would happen in the next year or two?
I'm really hopeful that it will, because as you start to see it, the pay laters appearing everywhere, and and they call it, I refer to it as pay later, but there's a whole bunch of different brands doing that, and as you see it everywhere, eventually the platforms are going to be like, so why don't we do this? And if you're a senior exec at one of these platforms and your customer service people are saying, how come I can do pay later on my Slurpee, but I can't do it for a domain name, right? It doesn't make sense. So at that point, I think that they'll just have to.
A domain name that has perpetual utility, makes no sense.
But we are seeing non-platforms doing it. I know we've got quite a few domainers that really are embracing the monthly payments, and it's just a straight rental, or it's a financing over a long period.
Venture.com is doing an amazing job with that. We've got 1 or 2 deals through them. Dan.com has introduced that. Huge Domains is doing it. And we do it. On our owned and operated portfolio, this is what we push. I come lease first. Like I'm coming out the gate, saying, look, here, get into this name, try it out. If it doesn't work out, walk away. No harm, no foul. What I'd love to see, I don't want to go too far in the weeds. We've already taken up a lot of your time here. But what I would love to see, and one of the things that we've been doing, and we've got like 5-6 deals now, is basically, treating it a little more like a VC, where you're sort of making an investment. Obviously it only works for certain circumstances, but not just about saying, oh, I want a piece of equity, but like treating it as convertible debt, sometimes with their options, sometimes with ours. But there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, but some version of pay later, spread it out, or perpetual lease, or, even the sort of premium model from some of the new GTLD registries. This seems like it's the right path.
But I think the all cash deals, when you're doing them, you're leaving money on the table.
100%.
So I think that there's a huge opportunity for us as domain investors over the next few years as the market changes.
Agreed. So before we wrap up, you mentioned VeriSign super quick in passing, and you have been so integral to the development of the domain industry. What are your thoughts on on VeriSign in general, on the new contract, on price increase? You want to touch on that?
That's a long conversation.
I'll do a short version.
That's a whole nother episode of DomainSherpa.
You have to separate. Your feelings of your voice not being heard through ICANN. The ICA has done a very good summary of representing the interests of domain owners, not just domain investors, but domain owners, and kind of the just the frustration. But having said that, if you just kind of step back and look at reality and the capitalistic world that we live in, then you should buy some VeriSign stock.
Exactly. This has been my point for
before.
years. It's just like, guys, instead of wasting resources, just buy the stock.
Yeah.
It's like it's the most perfect hedge.
Yeah.
So that's just.
Yeah.
And if anybody had been listening for the last 2 years, they'd be up like 300%.
Right.
Even the ICA. It's like I was telling the ICA, like, guys, for every $1 you want to go spend in fighting VeriSign on this, just buy VeriSign stock, because our treasury will would have tripled in value over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I think if we remove our biases and ignore the emotions of like, oh, you're not listening. Let's be pragmatic. Public companies survive on growth. They're not going to get growth from registration, so prices have to go up. Maintaining the integrity of VeriSign and its ability to effectively continue to operate that route is, essential to world commerce. And so, there's no incentive. Like, there's just no incentive to shifting that contract. There's no incentive to lowering prices. There's no meaningful incentive to any of that happening. And so it won't happen, because everything happens due to incentives.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they're not structured as a B Corp. They're beholden to their
shareholders.
Their reason for living is to maximize return to their shareholders.
It's amazing how quickly your perspective shifts once you start owning VeriSign stock too. It's like, I went deep back in March when it crashed all the way down to like $1.60, $1.59 or something, and I was like, oh my god, so happy, right?
Yeah.
And buy a big chunk, and now we're, anyways.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm with you. That's the right position.
Yeah. So it's sad, but it's also can be profitable, because if you've got the people that are being being squeezed the most, saying, there's no light at the end of the tunnel here for us. There's not like, oh, there's going to be a price break in 5 years and 10 years. No, there's no price break coming. It's just going to double every 10 years. So
that's it.
Just buy their stock.
If you're lucky, that's it.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was very fun.
Sorry, I'm stealing Tessa's thunder here, but we've talked about Water School. I know that's very near and dear to your heart, and I'm assuming that the charity that you're most associated with. But anything else, business, charity, life-wise, whatever.
Sure.
What do you got? Anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, along with it being my 50th, turning 50 this year, it's been 20 years this month, actually, since I was diagnosed with colon cancer. And so as part of that celebration of being here still, that I'm doing a 200-kilometer ride in August, raising money for charity for cancer research. Bike ride, yeah. Not electric assist, just pure hardcore cycling. And it's only my second year doing it. So my goal is to raise $20,000 for cancer research. More than 3/4 of the way there. So please, if I've helped you in any way in the last 20 years, please go to lau.com, lau.com, and make a pledge. And I'll be thinking of you in August. So help celebrate the fact that I'm here. If you've been to a NamesCon, you know, at NamesCon, chances are it wouldn't have happened if I had succumbed to cancer 20 years ago. So come help celebrate.
And just think about all the money you've saved from not having Richard and Greg hound you for donations at NamesCon. Especially this year.
Exactly.
Contribute that at lau.com.
Yeah. Yeah.
We will, as DomainSherpa, absolutely go to lau.com and make a donation. And that's amazing, man. Congratulations. My mom just beat, well, you know, she's now on the 5-year, you know, wait list, right? It's, but she just beat ovarian cancer in December. So, or I suppose January, she had a final treatment. And so, yeah, so I'm sensitive to it. It's an epic battle.
It is. It is.
You're a tough guy. You've conquered a lot.
Even if you look 15.
Yeah.
It's the camera.
It's a compliment, though, once you turn 50.
Yes, thank you.
Right, Richard, we will definitely see you in September virtually at NamesCon. And I do hope we have you on the show a little more often.
Thanks. I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Cool. All
and
right.
any of our audience who doesn't listen to our advice and does decide to go out and be a developer instead of an investor, you can go to logo.com and get a logo for your new business.
Exactly. Takes just a few minutes. Thanks for the plug.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.